Now time for us to really live up to Curiosita and to be curious. I'm going to introduce you to our doctoral candidate, Pule Moeketsi, who's going to enthrall us with his topic. And I encourage each of you to please, he knows that this is what he's up for, to please engage with him when he's going to present his research to us. He's going to try, I told him to focus on his methodology and not go into too much depth on the literature. But Pule is a marketing executive. And he's worked in areas, it's in Europe, Americas, and South Africa for Denel. As you know, it's a state-owned company, Denel Limited, since 2010. Prior to that, I want to salute him because he was actually a commissioned officer in the South African National Defence Force, where he served for 18 years. So I'm not going to be speaking of him as Pule Moeketsi, but rather Lieutenant Colonel Moeketsi, because that is the rank that he held. And what I think is incredible is that one of his own highlights is being that he has said in his career is the appointment as Staff Officer of Research and Speeches for the Chief of the South African Army, a position he held for 5 years, and Project Officer for Future SA Army Strategy. And the reason I say that this is something so incredible about you, Lieutenant Colonel Moeketsi, is because of the fact that you cared already then about bettering people, staying connected, speaking to people, which went to my discussion today. You not only are a phenomenal server and servant leader, but you hold 2 master's degrees, one from the United Kingdom and another one from South Africa. And it is our pride and privilege that we now can call you a Da Vinci star in our galaxy and someone who's working towards his doctoral thesis. And so today he's going to present it to you, and you must give the Lieutenant Colonel lots of problems because I'm sure he's given many young officers issues in their times. His topic is a systems thinking analysis of the South African defense industry, a national asset. And I think, to be honest with you, Pule, I think in an environment where we are seeing a lot of issues with state-owned entities and various aspects, I think your research has come at a critical time, and I look forward to everybody engaging with you. So I will open for questions after he's finished, but if there are questions during, you're welcome to ask them, and Pule, I will let you know if there are. So I introduce to you Lieutenant Colonel Pule Moeketsi. I know that you are retired from that, but if you retire with honor, you still hold your rank. I come from a police family, so I get that, so I will call you Lieutenant Colonel. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Mala, for the opportunity to do this presentation in front of this highly distinguished galaxy of Da Vincians. It's an absolute honor. Yes, indeed, I left the Defense Force in good standing to join Denel. And I am still serving, although in a reserve capacity, and my rank is still, I'm still holding my rank of Lieutenant Colonel. Thank you.
I was correct.
Yes, indeed. It's a challenge, you know, to do this presentation after such an eloquent speaker like Dr. Mala, but I will surely do my utmost best, you know, and live to the expectations of today. And in advance, I want to thank you very much for the inputs and insights that will be shared towards this presentation this afternoon. Looking forward to it. So I think in terms of my approach, I know that you have hinted that I should go straight into my methodological aspects, but it's a pretty much of it's a little bit challenging, I must admit, because I need to set the fundamental concepts in order, and I'm very conscious of the time that was allocated for me to do this presentation, but I will try and move as swift as possible and keep this presentation alive as I really enjoyed the opening session of this Curiosita. I think maybe also moving away from the fundamental concepts, I would like to go straight into my research cycle whereby I will start with the research problem in a clockwise fashion, move over to the hypothesis, the philosophical considerations, and then the research design and methodology adopted, and after which I will also discuss the data collection procedures and techniques, as well as the analysis thereof, linking everything back to the fundamental research problem of today. And if you may allow me, then let me start with these fundamental concepts which I really wanted to highlight, which is the idea of a nation. We all know that since the dawn of the democratic dispensation, South Africa aspires to become a rainbow nation, really diverse but united in its effort and outlook. And the government or the state itself sees itself as a developmental state, and they have introduced various policy documents from National Development Plan 2030 and various IPAP frameworks, which really look or focus mainly on the institutional capacity of the state in light of the triple challenges of poverty, unemployment, and inequality besieging South Africa at the moment. And the other concept is the one of national interest, because it should be clear that although states have got certain geographical locations and their own population, but at the end of the day, states pursue their interests within the international community of nations. And in that regard, they prefer a situation whereby they have the competitive advantage to pursue or advance their own interests. And in that instance, again, there's an issue of autonomy, strategic autonomy, which is very critical for the states to be able to pursue their interests, because we all know that there are no friends amongst the states. There's only permanent interests that exist permanently in most cases. And so it happens that sometimes that in the pursuit of their interests through peaceful means, but in other instances it can be through the highest level of competition itself, coercive competition, often called war. And now the states, in due cognizance of their national interests, they really prefer to be in that situation whereby they have the national power or the ways and means of that enable them to pursue or advance their interests within the broader system, international system, often called the supra system. And now being a student here at Da Vinci and having seeing the framework, the systems thinking framework that is adopted at Da Vinci, I felt that this is the correct platform for me to utilize in my learning and growth as a student, particularly in light of the fact that South Africa is a developmental state. But and you spoke about Denal, which is the company that I'm working for, and having served as well, those backgrounds, come together to put me in this situation, whereby we realize that at an industry level, from 1993, there were almost over 3,000 companies, defense-related companies. And today, as of 2017, in terms of my research, only 120 companies were existing. And also the other example is that over 130,000 employees used to work for this type of industry in the 1990s, and now only 15,000 or so in 2017. In terms of the research and development spent towards this industry, over 6 billion in 1990, and as of 2017, about 850. And the turnover has also shrunk from 26 billion up to a mere 850 million. In 2017. So obviously Denel is at the heart of this, that being the biggest state-owned entity and the leader of the rest of the other private companies that work together with it or collaborate with it. But at the same time, Denel providing me with, from a coordinated reality point of view, with a case study that also has to be looked at in light of the current woes that it's facing. The latest news, it owes its own employees from May last year, 2020, to date, over 600 million, and the rest of the suppliers over 900 million. So it is in this light that I felt that I should really bring these concepts together and tie them together in terms of the problem statement that I have, which is an apparent lack of understanding about the South African defense industry's role in a developmental state, and especially in relation to its national power, element of national power. I beg your pardon. And the aim, therefore, is to investigate, evaluate, and perhaps explain the role of SADI, or the South African defense industry, in a developmental state, by also illuminating its relationship to national power, without which states cannot pursue or advance their own interests in the international system. So then, to narrow it down then to the research questions that I'm looking at in terms of the study, the primary research question being, what is the role of South African defense industry in a developmental state that South Africa aspires to become, and the other immediate challenge being the drastic decline that the industry is facing, and how can its sustainability be optimized under the current context of a developmental state, but that also sees actually in brackets or in inverted commas institutional signs of institutional decline and decay starting to manifest themselves in various ways. And obviously the three research questions that I have also, the first sub-research question looks at how the South African defense technology production capability is connected to national power of South Africa, and why is that the case? And then the second one will look into why is the South African defense industry on the decline trajectory that it is embarking on at this stage, and what are therefore the implications of national power and ultimately South Africa as the state. So that's the second one, and then the third research question looks at the potential interventions that could optimize SADI's sustainability in a developmental state, and how that also fits into the picture of national power. So in this slide, I have developed my own conceptual framework which I intend, to explore, and particularly in this regard, I think I would like to zoom into the hypothesis that mainly looks into three issues that I wish to measure and test. Hypothesis one being, the alternative. Alternative hypothesis one stating that South African defense technology production capability is interconnected with South Africa's national power, and of course the null hypothesis saying that there's no relationship whatsoever between technology production and national power. The second hypothesis, would look specifically into the risk of South African defense industry's total demise, as to whether this will have far-reaching consequences on national power, and of course the null hypothesis looking into the opposite thereof. And the third hypothesis would be to establish whether an increase in SADC's diversification efforts from being the producer of hard power defense systems more to embracing the fourth and fifth industrial revolution, as to whether this would have an impact first and foremost on its market share and revenue streams, and secondly and lastly, as to whether the industry itself will become sustainable. So I have identified a couple of variables on this basis applicable in this hypothesis, whereby technology production obviously remains the independent variable, and the independent variable of interest in the first instance being national power and its connection to technology production, and in the second case of the ultimate risk of its total demise, as to whether will there be any impact on national power in the second instance, and the third instance, whereby I would be looking into whether the increase of diversification of its current portfolio to embrace fourth and industrial revolution, because that is not the case at this stage, as to whether that would give amount to a different picture here. So that being the two main independent and dependent variables, but I also have identified what I consider to be a mediating or an intervention variable in the light of the systems thinking which I bring into the study, and there the intention being to see what is the impact from this new way of thinking is brought into the picture, and what is the impact perhaps in the bigger picture, if there's any changes that happens. And then the final variable identified being the moderating variable, which has in itself a contingent effect on the relationship between the independent and the dependent variable. Because in this case, I have identified interconnectedness as the central theme, that all stakeholders, be it in government or anywhere within the industry, that they should know take cognizance of this variable, because everything else is interconnected, whether it's at the lowest or the micro system, where the main concern is about unemployment, inequality and poverty. There's implications all the way up until South Africa's ability to pursue or advance its own interests. The entire spectrum has got implications along the way. So I'm looking into this aspect, because failure to realize this interconnectedness would pose a serious challenge. Now then, I've addressed the research problem and the research questions. Then I've also alluded to the hypothesis. So I think the philosophical considerations then adopted for the study, obviously they are pragmatic in nature, because myself as the researcher, I believe that there's both singular and multiple explanations of reality, considering the micro, meso, exo and supra systems within which South Africa as a state finds itself, especially in the 21st century. And there's a belief I believe that these are essential actually to help me explain the reality of the South African defense industry in a developmental state. Obviously, in terms of the ontology, what is the nature of reality? Pragmatic, singular, and multiple realities. I have alluded that there's a hypothesis which I wish to test, and also considering the systems thinking, the multiple perspectives which I want to bring along into consideration, to mainly consider the three criterion which is very important: the value at each and every subsystem that is involved, and then the implications regarding the risk, regarding its demise, and then maybe thirdly, then sustainability. How does the picture change? Obviously, from an epistemological point of view, what is the relationship between the researcher and that which is being researched? Obviously, I rely on a very practical way of looking into both the quantitative and quantitative, or positivist and interpretivist aspects of the study, because anything that will help me to work and address the research problem is deemed to be of critical importance in this study. And obviously, the axiology, what is the value, the role of values? Obviously, multiple sciences, unbiased, in the sense that, the positivist or quantitative approach allows me to detach myself from the reality and only apply or follow the conceptual framework, and, in a detached manner, look into the well-defined scope, the sampling thereof, the survey, the measurements, and the tools, the statistical tools that can be employed. And obviously, due to my background also in service of the nation in the defense force, and currently being a marketer who sells guns, rockets, missiles, and bombs worldwide, there's an element, again, from a qualitative point of view or interpretivist point of view, whereby certain biases, maybe might impair me. But yes, that is more or less the picture that I have ascertained. So in terms of the research design, considering the purpose of the study being explanatory in nature, and the use of research being more applied, bordering on the applied side of reality, because the challenges or the demise of Denel is a current reality that applies not only from a managerial leadership point of view to Denel, but also there's a policy side of issues that actually might compromise South Africa's stature and its ability to further pursue its own goals and objectives in the future. And then the mode of research then is abductive research mode, because then both the quantitative and qualitative aspects of the study will be considered, obviously heavily influenced by both the positivist and interpretivist paradigms adopted. And then now, in terms of my and so to this effect, the sequential mixed methodology approach has been adopted, whereby I feel that I will first deal with the the quantitative aspects, like survey, distribute it, consolidate and collate it, look into capture whatever that's applicable from a statistical point of view, and after which I will then follow it up with the qualitative research, whereby I will be going out to the industry experts, generals, policymakers, and members of the industry who are qualified to, in their own rightful positions, to contribute to this type of study, considering the implications that perhaps it might have to South Africa as a state going forward. And obviously looking into the other internal or inward-looking aspects of it, that are the means and the ways that develop national power, and then the other aspect looking into the exercise of its power in pursuit of its interest. So from a data collection strategy point of view, Denel is a befitting, in my opinion, a befitting case to look into from the industry point of view, because its annual reports are online. Anybody and elsewhere can validate some of the issues that are being brought forward in the study. But besides that, it is also a challenge to go to private companies, to seek their financial statements and things like that, because they feel under no obligation to publish those to anybody. So from that point of view, Denel is both as an industry leader owned by the South African government in one hand, and secondly, as a particular case in point, other considerations. And to that effect, I looked at the entire broad population of Denel, the 8 divisions from 24 in 1990 to the 8 divisions that are currently existing, with a total workforce or employees of about 2,007, and majority of them resigning under the current climate. And the population, in my opinion, I beg your pardon, it would be fairly representative of the defense industry, because Denel conceptualizes or goes through the ideation process, designs, develops, and ultimately commissions or commercializes its product. So from the industry point of view, it is a fairly representative company to look at from a population frame point of view. And the sample thereof, all the 80 divisions, the total number of existing employees has been taken into account, and on a 95% confidence level, I ran my sums, and a total of 350 employees would be the recipients of the survey that which would be randomly sent through to every employee. Only the 350 there, on the basis of the criteria that is mentioned of representativeness, because Denel has got technologies that apply both in air, space, land, sea. These are the technologies that cover the various system orientations, including the ultimate space hopes or satellites for South Africa. So that's a good example. And then on the secondary side of things, I will be zooming into the captains of industry, the government leaders, and those who are affair with the defense industry, and some of the media personalities on a sample that would be non-purposive on a purposive, by means of a purposive method which would be applied, because I'm only looking at those people who have the relevant qualifications, expertise, and knowledge to really contribute to the study in that regard. So from data collection procedures and techniques, obviously a research instrument is the survey, and it was developed and submitted also as part of my ethical clearance with Vinci, which was approved around April this year, happily so. And after that, pilot tested the survey, and after which I happily sent it distributed for implementation. And as we speak at the moment, I'm busy with the interviews with these captains of industry and people identified by means of purposive sampling. It's 11 first. If I don't reach, and that 11 is informed by those key stakeholders that really have direct influence into Denel's or the defense industry, those who have got interest and or dominant influence. So I looked into them and they came to a number of 11 in terms of clustered it around the communities, those who are in government, those who are in the industry itself as CEOs and captains of industry, those who are in the media who are knowledgeable about this. So categorized that, and I said this would form or inform my sampling, my purposive sampling of 11 different stakeholders. And then if I don't reach a point of saturation, then the process would be repeated once again, hopefully, and stabilize at a maximum number of 22. So the last aspects, obviously, data analysis by means of statistics and themes, and particularly that during data analysis, response to the fundamental research questions and sub-questions, whereby I will also look into aspects of field for data, type 1, type 2 errors, fit for purpose, reliability, validity, by means of statistical application, and thereafter hypothesis testing, where the relevant or applicable regression analysis of the alternate and null hypothesis would be explored. And then the case study, obviously, it will be mainly qualitative now when I get into that, in order to make valid inferences. So this is basically what I had in mind in terms of my approach. I will really appreciate your inputs, guidance, and so forth. Dr. Mala, thank you very much. Back to you.
Thank you so much. I will now open the floor to questions. Prof. Klopper, I see you've got a question.
Thank you, Mara. Pule, no, that's great. Thank you for that. So as you now embark on this journey, I think one of the big things that always catch researchers off guard is the surprises. So my question is this thing to you, and I know it's a vague question, just to open it up, where's your blind spot in this process? What's your plan B? Because you might go in and your sample might not realize, or as you go and you do that analysis of your construct, you might not have reliability. Those are things you need to preempt up front, and it's typical things that's good to consider. So what's your plan? Where's your blind spot? I want to first get your view to that.
Okay. Prof. Klopper, thank you very much for that input. Yeah. I thought there are limitations in all forms of research. Research is not perfect. Every study has got its own limitations. And I thought, again, maybe at this point, the mere fact that the structure of the defense industry is so broad and huge, with universities, defense research institutes, and so forth, and I'm only looking into Denel. To me, that was, it is my main concern at this stage. But yet, for the purposes of the study, I still feel that it remains relevant in terms of responding to the research questions, because all members of this family are facing the same challenges, from incessant budgetary cuts, the decline worldwide in this type of industry, which is a worldwide phenomenon. So I felt that maybe Denel would still speak to the issues, although yes, I would be aware of the fact that I only looked into Denel as a perhaps a cultural and thought leader. So yes, that is an issue that I've taken note of, Prof. Klopper. Thank you very much.
So my suggestion would be, obviously the case of Denel is a convenient sample, so you must basically say want to look at the Denel because of the following reasons, and you can motivate and argue that, you know, a state-owned enterprise, so we understand the history, hence you don't want to go broad, and it's also a prominent provider. And then when you go into Denel and you get your respondents involved, you know, then it will be a representative sample. And so that's the way to argue that one. I suspect you might run into sample size problems, not being able to use those tests. Maybe you should explore something like a product least squares, but, you know, that become analytical. So rather look at the conceptual framework first and why Denel and how, and then I think if I listen to you, you can make a very good case why your conceptual framework, you know, is aligned to this topic. You as a researcher continue discussion from your ontology, epistemology and axiology, which is a foundation, and then you need to follow the evidence. So you can't at this moment say you're going to use this test, that test, you have ideas, but you need to follow the evidence and see which tests are allowed based on your normality and all of that. But we can have that discussion maybe. We're actually having it on Wednesday evening with our master's group. You're welcome to join that if you want. But it's really enjoyed that, Pule.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Prof. Klopper. I see in order Dr. Lloyd and then Prof. Singh. And then I've also got a question, but I'll wait to see if there's any others after the two of them. Dr. Lloyd?
Thank you very much. And thank you, Pule. It's a very interesting study. And I must say, I was very privileged to understand the whole defense system background, all of that stuff. And I was also very privileged to have dealt in long discussions with the now passed away Kebby Mpachwa, who was the Deputy Minister of Defense. And so got to have quite an understanding. And from listening to you, I hear there is a passion in your study that there should be a very strong defense system, such as a Denel system in a developmental state, especially for a number of reasons, national security and a whole lot of other things that we need that for. But there are so many issues, if I listen to you, that are impacting. There are so many risks. There are so many concerns. People are leaving. The budgets are going, no money. An environment where people haven't been paid salaries, dropping income generation, all of those things. So when I listen to that, my sense is that you want to say we need an agile organization, streamlined with very clear outcomes, outputs in your impacts, etc. My proposal, and I don't know how far you are in the study, my proposal would be to possibly also just use a very simple theory of change approach, where you start off with what is the impact that you want to see, or the final thing that you want to see emerging, and then working backwards with all your assumptions and your outputs and outcomes and all of those good things in a very simple theory of change, which links very well to systems thinking. And maybe that would help clarify wonderful ideas you've expressed, lots of them, but with a passion shining through that you want to see a Denel, a defense technology agency in a developmental state that would render South Africa strong, full of a defense ability and capability, etc. I hope that makes some sense. Thank you.
Well received. Thanks, Dr. Lloyd.
I think, Dr. Lloyd, I think that was a brilliant point, and Pule, it was linked to one of my two questions, which is around knowing as a doctoral student what you want to contribute and, you know, what new knowledge you want to be contributing, and then looking at it from there. So thank you, Dr. Lloyd. I think your comment was excellent. Prof. Singh?
Thank you very much, Marla. Pule, so it's more a question, and then I've got a comment for you as well. So the question that I have is, I've listened to a very passionate presentation, which is great. I belong to the security cluster, so I know the business of defense. And so what and you can explain this perhaps. I'm not so sure that I got the context of the study. So when you look at in your thesis, perhaps to paint the context correctly, because we are an aspiring developmental state. We haven't met the criteria yet. Regardless, from 1994 to now, we have not met the criteria for a developmental state, which is global criteria. So we are an aspiring global, at least an aspiring developmental state. But apart from that, what I want to say is the contextual bit for me is you did mention that globally, the defense industry is seeing serious losses and serious problems. To look at to what extent maybe the focus of the defense industry is perhaps off target, meaning we are in a changed world. Is South Africa at war? Whom are we at war with? What is the level of defense needed? Are we perhaps overfunding defense? So these are questions. I'm not saying yes or no, but these are the issues that arise, which may give you some indication as to why the decline, which you're worried about. So I think when you contextualize your problem, just to pay attention to those things. And if anything, my own feeling is that we are at war with ourselves, you know, and maybe the defenses that the country needs, it's not the same as it would have been previously. On the side of the suggestion, like Dr. Lloyd has just mentioned, she's suggested a theory to you, theory of change. I would suggest you also, as a secondary theory, look at the theory of connectivity.
So we've reached the end now. I want to just ask my question and just a quick answer. Did you consider looking at it qualitatively, given some of Prof. Klopper's comments around, you know, maybe struggling with sample sizes and engagement, and the fact that you can get quite a lot of depth from qualitative? I'm just wondering what made you select quantitative?
I gave a background in terms where the mode of the study, you know, the way I understood it, which is abductive mode, and the pragmatic philosophy or worldview that's adopted for the study, because they emphasize multiple perspectives of looking at the issue. All right, and so in that instance, I was also I wanted to have an objective analysis of the reality, but I mean, hence I came up with this conceptual framework, which I hopefully would test through the survey, and hopefully get the results that I wanted, so that I can have a detached view, you know, of the process. Obviously, being an officer, I was just concerned that leaning heavily on the qualitative side might shroud my prowess of thinking, if I might put it that way.
Yes, and I think that's a good point. And just make sure that when you're doing your study that you put those justifications, and remember in your limitations of the study and those type of things when you get to the end, that you can always say for future research or to go deeper into this topic or to look at other aspects of the framework, you would recommend qualitative. So just always remember that as long as you can justify your position and why you've done what you've done, it's really important. So just remember that. I want to thank you, Lieutenant Colonel Moeketsi, today. And I want to thank each and every one of you for joining us today. And apologies, as I said, about the guest speaker that couldn't join, but I hope you enjoyed engaging with me as much as I enjoyed engaging with you guys on the topic. It was thoroughly enjoyable, and I really adored the conversation and engagement. A couple of people had to leave at 1:45 because of work commitments. They asked me to send their regards. And I think you've done very well today. And I think your study has a lot of progression. And I look forward to seeing you at oral defenses one day, and congratulate you on that. And obviously for serving our country in which the way that you do, it is really amazing. Thanks to all of you that have joined. I always say that time is precious. And the reality is that when you give of yourselves, like each of you do when you join Curiosita, you're giving us a piece of yourself because you're giving us precious time and your mind and your thoughts. So to all of those that commented, all of those that joined, thank you so much for engaging with us and giving of your time and giving of your minds. We greatly appreciate it. Have a wonderful week ahead, and we look forward to seeing you all in November.